You're sitting in a room full of people, laughing, nodding, maybe even talking, but somewhere deep inside, there's this quiet, hollow ache. Like you're watching everything through glass. Like you're there, but not really there. And the scariest part? You can't explain it. Because how do you tell someone you feel completely alone when you're surrounded by people who care about you? Here's what nobody tells you. That feeling has a name. It has a cause. And more importantly, it has a reason it keeps happening to you specifically. This isn't about being antisocial. This isn't about being broken. This is about something much deeper. Something happening inside your mind that most people go their entire lives without ever understanding. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Let's talk about what's actually going on. Psychology calls it existential loneliness. But I want you to forget that term for a second, because it sounds clinical and cold, and what you're feeling is anything but clinical. What you're experiencing is one of the most human things that exists. It's the gap between who you are on the inside and who the world gets to see on the outside. And for some people, maybe for you, that gap is enormous. Think about the last time you were in a social setting, a dinner, a party, a family gathering. You performed. You smiled at the right moments. You said the right things. And then you went home and felt emptier than before you left. That's not weakness. That's your nervous system telling you that connection happened on the surface, but not at the depth you actually need. Here's the psychological truth. Human beings don't just need presence. We need attunement. We need someone to actually see us. Not the version we perform, but the version that exists underneath all the noise. And when that doesn't happen, when every interaction stays surface level, your brain registers it as loneliness, even if you were never physically alone for a single second. There's research from the University of Chicago that found chronic loneliness activates the same neural pathways as physical pain. Read that again. Your brain processes being unseen the same way it processes getting hurt. This isn't you being dramatic. This is your biology screaming at you that something important is missing. But here's where it gets really interesting. And this is the part that changed everything for me when I first understood it. Most people who feel this kind of deep loneliness are not people who lack social skills. They're actually often the most emotionally intelligent people in the room. They feel too much. They notice too much. They pick up on the inauthenticity in conversations. They sense when someone is performing just like they are. And because they're aware of all of this, because they can feel the gap between real connection and surface-level interaction, the loneliness hits harder, deeper, more relentlessly. You're not lonely because you're broken. You might be lonely because you're wired to crave something real in a world that's gotten very good at looking real without being real. Social media didn't create this problem, but it absolutely made it worse. We now live in an era where everyone's highlight reel is constantly visible, where you can have 800 followers and feel invisible, where you can text someone all day and still go to sleep feeling completely unknown. The quantity of connection has never been higher. The quality, the depth, has never been lower for so many people. And your nervous system knows the difference, even when your brain tries to convince you that this is enough. So what actually helps? What does psychology say about breaking through this particular kind of loneliness? First, and this might feel uncomfortable, you have to stop performing. Not all at once, not recklessly, but you have to start letting people see a more real version of you, even in small ways. Vulnerability researcher Brené Brown spent years studying this, and her findings were clear. The people who feel the most connected are not the ones who have the most friends. They're the ones who are willing to be genuinely seen, who allow themselves to be imperfect, uncertain, real, in front of at least one or two other people. Connection doesn't scale. You don't need hundreds of people. You need a few people who actually know you. And for them to know you, you have to let them in. Second, you need to understand that this loneliness is often a signal. not a sentence. It's your inner self pointing at something it needs that it isn't getting. Maybe it's creative expression. Maybe it's deeper conversations. Maybe it's a relationship where you don't have to translate yourself every single time you speak. The loneliness is painful, yes, but it's also information. It's telling you something important about who you are and what kind of life actually fits you. Third, and this one is backed heavily by psychology, you have to start distinguishing between being alone and being lonely. They are not the same thing. Some of the most grounded, connected people in the world spend significant time in solitude. Because they've learned how to be in relationship with themselves. They've learned to hear their own thoughts without immediately trying to silence them. Loneliness is the pain of unwanted disconnection. Solitude, real solitude, can be nourishing. It can be where you remember who you actually are underneath everything you've been performing. The people who feel most at peace, most connected, most alive, they are not the people who are never alone. They are the people who know themselves deeply enough that being alone doesn't feel like abandonment. It feels like coming home. Here's what I want you to take from this. If you've been feeling this quiet, persistent ache of feeling alone, even in a crowded room, please hear this clearly. You are not too much. You are not too sensitive. You are not broken. You are someone with a deep need for real, authentic, human connection, living in a world that has largely outsourced intimacy to convenience. That is not your failure, but it can become your awareness. And awareness, real, honest awareness, is always where change begins. The loneliness you feel is not the end of the story. It might actually be the beginning of you finally understanding what kind of connection, what kind of life, what kind of relationships your soul has been trying to find all along.